Welcome to the Worth Listening podcast, where we focus on having positive and productive conversations about money. Join your host, Lauren Williams, four-time Olympian turned financial planner, as her guests share their stories about how they manage money. We aim to help you own your personal money story and feel good talking about it. Lauren will teach you that money is a tool that can help you live the life you want. You should feel comfortable listening, sharing, and communicating about it. And now, here's your host, Lauren Williams.
Hi, and welcome to the Worth Listening podcast. I'm your host, Lauren, and today I'm excited to have Deshaya Williams here to share her money memoir with us. Deshaya played college sports and was an NCAA champion who decided to go on to coaching and became Regional Coach of the Year. She now owns her own wellness company, Renewed Youth, where she specializes in birthing coaching, postpartum support, fitness, and yoga coaching. Today, Deshaya and I talk about scholarships, avoiding student loan debt, and entrepreneurship. We also talk about how to have a side hustle with a purpose bigger than the income it provides and how parents can affect your financial plan. Let's listen to Deshaya share her money memoir. Welcome to the show, everybody. Today we have Deshaya Williams on to share with us her money memoir. Deshaya, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So let's just start at the beginning. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from? In doing that, also tell us about your first memory of money.
I grew up in upstate New York in Saratoga Springs. I grew up in a single parent home with my mother. And my first memory of money probably, I guess it was not for quite some time, probably around kindergarten or first grade when I got change from my grandparents for birthdays and things like that. And my mom said that I could go to the store and use that money. So that's probably my first memory. And we didn't really have like banks or anything in the house to like save it or put it away. It was just, you get money, you use it.
Got it. And so what other influences did you have around growing up? You said you saw the get money, spend the money, but were there other people? Is that pretty much how your whole community was? Did you have siblings in the household that were also doing the same thing?
The area that I grew up in was pretty affluent around me. I wasn't pretty affluent, but everyone around me kind of was, and all of my friends were. And so I think that kind of influenced my story of money later on in life. But really just kind of seeing how my friends and their families kind of managed their money and the things that they were able to have and do and go on vacations and things like that. So I think that was part of my money story. And then also my grandparents, they lived about 3 hours away. And so we spent summers there and in their community. And so really just seeing that they owned their own house. We lived in an apartment and just like seeing the differences that kind of was. And at a younger age, wondering how you manage to get a house versus live in an apartment. How do you get to stay at this one place and not the other? And why did we have to keep moving? Because we moved a lot.
Did you ask those questions of anyone?
No, I just wondered them in my head. Now I would have asked them. I wish I would have asked them because I think it would have helped me along the way as I grew up when I got out on my own. But I just kind of learned by watching and observing, but not really asking any questions. It was one of those households where it's like, you are seen and not heard as a young person. So you don't ask.
I know that feeling.
Yeah.
So living in the affluent community, I'm assuming going to school with the affluent kids, did you compare yourself? You said you noticed those differences, but did you feel like self-conscious about your clothes were this way versus theirs? Or were you just a pretty happy kid? You just noticed that there was something different?
Oh, no, definitely. By middle school, I totally noticed. I don't remember noticing it as much during elementary school, but in elementary school back when I was young went until 6th grade. So when I finally went into middle school in 7th grade, it was a big difference because I did sports as well. So I noticed that I couldn't have the running tights that everybody else was wearing. Like I was wearing tights that didn't look like everyone else's, or my sneakers didn't look like everyone else's, and different random things like that. Luckily, I had coaches that kind of stepped up and would make sure that I had the right shoes to wear, whether I was throwing as a track and field athlete or whether I was running, so that I wasn't like getting injured. And then my grandparents would gift me a pair of tights for Christmas. Like that's the stuff that I started asking for Christmas, because I just recognized that my mom wasn't a good money manager. So even though she was making a decent living for that time, having 3 kids, me being the oldest sibling and being a single parent, and then having some other money financial problems with her, just like using it on gambling or whatever else she was using it on. We just didn't have the extra for those things to do this, which is how I ended up in track and field, because you didn't need a lot of like extra equipment. It was the shoes, the tights, which weren't necessary per se, but it was just like minimal to be able to do the sport.
Yeah, that's exactly how I ended up in track and field, is like, oh, you just need shoes.
Yeah.
And like you said, sometimes not even at the lower level. So yeah, and I think you bring up some really good points there. What about what your mother did for a living? You said she made a pretty good living and was able to support 3 children on it.
She worked for the telephone company as a telephone operator, and then as a manager and a supervisor. And she was with them for 25 years. First it was with AT&T, and then they transferred over to Verizon. It was behind the scenes back when they had like a TTY. So for like deaf people, she would do the typing for them to have the conversation over the phone. So
are there any messages you remember her sending you about money? Was money talked about, or was there like a cliche, money doesn't grow on trees, something that you remember her saying about finances?
Yeah, definitely. Money doesn't grow on trees was a statement in the house. And then just kind of being aware of the fact that when I started working and having a job and babysitting, even from the time I was 14 on, knowing that she would even ask me for money at that point, I'd be like, I'm not even making that much money. But just like knowing that you don't say no to your parents when it comes to sharing whatever wealth or whatever you have. And I mean, obviously it's not a lot of wealth at 14 babysitting, but I just always felt like money was tight. And so I think that has influenced me. I have a savings account all the time, whether I have a lot of money coming in or not. I always have a savings account, and I'm always trying to put money into it and grow it. So I'm more frugal now because of those experiences, because I don't ever want to be in a situation where I'm having to move out of my house because I can't pay the rent 1 month or something like that. So I think that watching my mom in that realm really affected how I think about money. So it wasn't like direct messages that she was giving, but just kind of a message of seeing what was happening and saying, I don't want that to happen to me.
Yeah, I think frequently that's what we experience is money messages given to us in various different forms, not just the verbal format. And sometimes we don't take time to reflect on how our childhood and the experience that we have shaped the money values and goals that we are currently enacting in our lives.
I think that it affected me not having a lot of financial education going through high school, affected me when I got to college. So when they asked me, oh, you can sign up for this credit card and get a t-shirt, I was like, oh, sweet. So I did that so much through college. Like I didn't realize how much it was messing up my credit score and messing all these things up, and didn't even learn that it had done that until I was probably in my mid-20s and was like, oh, shoot. Nobody told me not to sign that credit card thing so that I can get a t-shirt. I didn't know.
Yeah. Talk a little bit more about that, because I think that's something that people frequently run into. Of course, now we have new laws that don't allow them to just be handing out, like you said, those free t-shirts by just sign on this dotted line sort of thing. But what was the thoughts? What did you think that card was? Did you think it was free money, or did you understand anything about having to pay it back?
I wouldn't take the card. I literally just would sign the paper. They'd send me the card and have the t-shirt. But that negatively affected, like every time they would run my credit to see if they could give me the credit card, it was negatively impacting my credit score. And I had no idea about that. Later on, when I got out of college and was in my second master's program, I finally said yes to a credit card and kept it, and just kept using it and was like, oh, no big deal. Like, yeah, I have to pay it back, but I'll pay it back later. I can use it for groceries. I can use it for gas, because I was basically living off of it when I got out of college. And then after that, I was like, oh man, why do I have $2,500 worth of debt on this credit card and I don't have a way to pay it, even though now I'm working? Because now I'm living hand to mouth to pay the bills that I have, and I can't take on this extra bill, even though I'm not using it anymore and I've cut it up. So just really trying to figure that all out has been a struggle.
Yeah, let's circle back to college days and talk a little bit about, were there student loans in the mix, 3 siblings, and you saying you feeling like money was always tight? Was there a college fund, or how was that all talked about or taken care of? And
yeah, so when I was in 10th grade, my mom was like, hey, we have no money for college. So what are you going to do? So I was like, sweet.
Look, she still gave you 2 years notice.
Right. So I was like, okay, well, then I'll just go to a junior college and I'll figure it out. And then my coaches were like, well, or you can just get really good at your sport and go to school like that. And so that's what I did. I just literally would go home from practice and still be practicing and doing every kind of drill that I possibly could do, and became number one in the state, like not number one in the state, but really top end of the state of New York for my particular event, and then earned a full scholarship to school. So that really helped a lot because my next sibling was 3 years behind me in going off to school. So that set an example for her and what she needed to do. So that helped while I was away at school. But what they don't tell you is that, yeah, that full scholarship covers your tuition and stuff like that, but it doesn't cover any of the extras, which I still couldn't get when I was at home. So I was on full scholarship, still working a part-time job at school by my second semester in my freshman year. That's how I earned extra money, was working on campus and doing different odds and ends. So if you can imagine doing 20 hours of my sport plus all rehab and stuff that I had to do because I was often injured, and working and trying to do my academics as well. So just a lot of different pieces, which is probably why I like to stay busy now. But yeah, just a lot of juggling and keeping all the things going.
Multitasking, something wonderful to add to a resume, the ability to multitask.
Yeah.
Sports gives you so many life skills that some people don't tune into, but that's definitely one of them.
Yeah.
And then you said you did a master's degree as well. Was that the same sort of scenario? Was there scholarship money or student loans?
So I finished my schooling in 4 years, stayed for a fifth year. And so my fifth year was paid for through another scholarship. And then my sixth year, to be able to cover that second year of that first master's, was covered through another scholarship through the conference. So yeah, all of that was covered. I only had to take out a small loan for like $2,000 between my undergrad and my first master's because I needed to pay a rent that another roommate had moved out early. And I was like, holy cow, I don't have any extra. At that point, I hadn't had a savings account. And so I didn't have any extra to cover the part where the roommate moved out and she didn't cover it. So I had to take out an extra loan to cover that. And then when I did my second master's, which took 4 years, which is a master's in divinity, that was all loans, both subsidized and unsubsidized federal loans. And that is the killer. That's what I still am paying back now. And I wouldn't do it that way again. But I was still young enough that I didn't really understand so I was living off of the extra. They would be like, oh, well, you have qualified for X amount to take these classes, but you only need this amount. And I was like, oh, well, I'll take the extra so that I can live off the little bit extra that you're going to. And bad idea. So, but I didn't know. And so no one was telling me that's a bad idea. So I'm still paying that back.
Gotcha. Okay. So you just hit a whole bunch of little nuggets here. So I first want to go back to your first master's degree. I think a lot of people take for granted this idea of getting a scholarship and going to school. And they think that people sometimes get these athletic scholarships because they have goals and aspirations of becoming a pro athlete. But we know the statistics say that the majority of the athletes that are playing a college sport are not going to become pro. They need that education. And so, one, you took seriously your education and the opportunity to get the free education, and took it so seriously that you went ahead and used your last little bit of availability or scholarships money that were available to start the master's program. And so it's like, hey, I got at least 1 year of this knocked out. And then you still had the opportunity to go back and look into other scholarship opportunities to get that second year paid for. And so using college sports as an opportunity to be able to pay for college and set yourself on the right track gives you that lead on so many other of your peers who have to take out student loans because they have no other options. And so I think sometimes we just need to cut our brain on to any scholarship opportunity, whether it be sports, academics, whatever the case may be, because we want to get those loans as low as possible so that you have the best chance at starting your career in a place where you can actually save and build wealth.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So thanks for bringing that up. And then you talked about having a roommate and the roommate flaking out on you. And so how frequently does that happen in the college world? Never, not at all. No one ever does that, right? But it brings up the importance of the emergency plan, and everybody's kind of making dollars stretch as much as possible in college. But whenever there is some extra around and as much as possible, that's where the emergency plan comes into place. Is have this extra money sitting around. And it's so hard for us at that age. I know it's really hard for me to say, I need to have $2,000 sitting aside, just doing nothing. Like, I don't really know about this.
Right.
But yeah, you never know when something's going to come up. The car is going to break down, or your roommate's going to up and leave in the middle of a lease, and all these different things that can happen to you. Yeah, people flake out and you're left on the hook. You ruin relationships because of it. And so just really being mindful and cognizant of, you can't really account for what others are doing.
Yep, exactly. Hard lesson learned.
Yes, yes, yes. And then you talked about that second master's degree. And I think it's one of the biggest things that we've come up against in society today is that the student loan money is just being given away. And it feels so free and it's so easy. It's click here, do this, do that. And ta-da! And something a lot of people don't know is that when they're coming up with these amounts, like you said, this is the cost to go to school. It's including the cost for you to fly back and forth. If you live in California and you're going to school in Florida, they factored into the cost of your education. And so you might not be flying back and forth home to go home for Christmas and Thanksgiving and all those different things. And so that's where you said they make this big pot of money. This is what's available to you when really what you need is tuition, room and board maybe, or, whatever the case may be. But really taking the time to look at that sheet and say, which of these costs do I actually need to incur in order to reach my goal of education versus just signing on the dotted line saying, yes, give me it all, not realizing that you're increasing the amounts you'll have to pay back later and that your job may not be in line with your ability to pay that back. So I think you just brought up like 3 really great points. Okay, so when did you feel like you first had control over your money? What did that look like for you?
I feel like I first had control over my money when I was 30. It wasn't until I was 30 when I was like, okay, I know what I'm doing now. I know what I need to do. I know how to fix this. And so that's when I started trying to pay down my loan, just paying at least the minimum on my loans with what I could do, and then asking for income-based loan repayment stuff and just trying to get situated with that and having that savings account that was really growing and not just putting in and then being used within the next month or something like that. So when I turned 30 and moved back from down south back up to my home state and was able to save a little bit with living with family for a little while, that really helped grow me.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point as well, is not being afraid to humble yourself and say like, hey, I'm going to move back in to cut my expenses so that I can get myself in order. They say that millennials are the group that is like moving back home. They don't want to leave home and they make jokes about this idea. But when you're strapped with various kinds of debt and your income is not able to support both debt payoff and the ability to be able to save, the best thing to do and the most responsible decision I think that you can make is cut expenses as much as possible. And sometimes that is getting a roommate or moving back home, staying with somebody else where you can pay lesser rent than you would to be in an apartment on your own, just to be able to say, I'm grown and I live alone and I should do this. Sometimes we got to eat a little bit of humble pie to really be able to reach our goals.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what were you thinking when you graduated with your 2 degrees, and what were you planning on doing or becoming, and where did you end up?
I had no really idea. I just wanted to help people and I wanted to serve and do different things. So I went back and was working at the Department of Labor in my home state, and I had calculated how many laps it took around our cubicles to be a mile. And so my boss pulled me in. She's like, you're doing great work. We love what you're doing, but let me see your resume. Let me see. And I happened to be working since I was working at the Department of Labor, I was helping getting people jobs. That was my job. And she was like, let me take a look at your resume and see what else you might want to do. And so at that point, she was like, maybe coaching would be great for you. I was like, oh, I did do that for a little while I was in college. I always coached summer camps. After she did all that and looked at it, I got into coaching. So I coached at a Division III for several years, and then I moved on to coaching at a Division I school for a while. So I coached for a total of 10 years between Division III and Division I. I realized like coaching and serving really is in my blood, and this is what I want to do, and this is what I love. And I said, but now how can I do it for others? How can I do it in a greater scale, at a bigger capacity besides just student athletes? And so that's when I opened up my own business about 1.5 years ago called Renewed Youth, which is I'm a doula, which is a birth coach, a postpartum doula as well. So helping women after they give birth, do fitness, I do life coaching, and I do yoga instruction. So just a little bit of everything. Again, just multitasking. I love to help in a lot of different areas. And I feel like this gives me the greatest freedom financially and emotionally to be able to create my own seat at the table and say, this is what I want. This is how I think it should work. And it gives me good experience to be able to navigate the way as I start to think about going back to school to get my doctorate in industrial psychology. But I'll have the experience behind it to know what it looks like and how to really do that work from a research base after I've done it for a while.
Wow. You have your hand in so many different things. You talk about the art of multitasking. That is amazing. Let's start with the doula. I think a lot of people don't know what a doula is, what that means. They're like, are you guys speaking another language right now? So break down for us what a doula does and why you chose to become a doula.
Doula is from the Greek word, and it just means a woman serving women during birth and afterwards. Just really that emotional support, that informational support, and that physical support, one-on-one, consistent support for a woman during her birthing time, and really just helping her have her own voice. So I'm not saying anything to the doctor for her or anything like that. I'm just reminding her of her birth plan, reminding her of what she wants and what her goals are for her birth, and just reminding her, hey, do you have any questions about what's happening to you right now? Is there something you want to ask the doctor right now? So that she doesn't get caught up in the moment and forget what her plan is. So really just coaching her to know, hey, this is your plan. This is what we've talked about. This is what we've discussed. This is the information that we've researched. And so let's try and stick to the plan. And then also being aware of, hey, we might have to have a plan B, but we've already talked about what the plan B would be, what the plan C would be. So if she's thinking, hey, I want to have a home birth, or I want to have a water birth, and I don't want a whole bunch of interventions, and then something comes up. We've already talked about that might be something that comes up and that we might have to have some medical interventions from an epidural or an episiotomy, whatever it may be. So it's not a surprise to her, and she knows how to deal with it in that moment. And she's not like, what? We never talked about this. So really and it allows for that peace and that calm so that your body can do what it was created to do. And that's essentially what it is we're just getting our bodies into a space to be able to do what it was made to do, because it's stressful walking into a hospital, even when you're not giving birth, or into a doctor's office. So just having that calm of knowing what's happening, knowledge is power for sure.
Yeah, I think that's really awesome. And I happen to know that it's getting, kind of trendy among young professionals, if you will, to have the doula as part of their birth plan. But I think one of the biggest things that you hit on there is just the idea of just having a plan. And so we think you make a baby, you have a baby, you move on with life, but there's so much planning and preparation that goes into that 9 months or however long it takes for you to carry that child. And why not create a specific plan about how you'd like for the day that the baby comes to go versus just kind of waiting and playing it all by ear. Would you say that most of the people who take on a doula are also, like you said, using a birthing center or some sort of natural form versus the hospital? Like what percentage are using traditional medicine versus, I guess that's alternative medicine, would you call that?
Yeah, so I would say it's about 50-50. It just depends, because I think the biggest thing for my profession right now is helping educate women that everyone needs a doula, whether you're in the hospital, at a birthing center, or doing a home birth. It is important to have a doula because that support is needed. Probably, I would say even more so for someone who's having a cesarean section or something like that, where there's more interventions, because it can be traumatic. It's major surgery to have a cesarean. They're cutting into your abdominal muscles, and that's an even longer recovery. So having someone there to talk you through that, to support you, to help bring you the baby, because you can't really lift a lot of things, and your spouse or your partner has to go back to work, unfortunately, sooner than any of us would like. So having that aftercare support is super important and encouraging. So I think it's across the board. It's hard to just say, but I think more so in previous years, it was more earthy people is what I usually say who were using a doula. But now everyone is coming to the understanding of how important it is. I know in my home state of New York, even our governor has now set in some laws and some trial things to see how we can get a doula for every single woman despite their income status. So just making sure that it's available and that maybe insurance can cover it and how it can be made available, because it helps with decreasing maternal mortality.
That's a great lead in to tying into the finance aspect of this is, so currently it's not something that's covered by anyone's insurance. And if that's the case, then how do you pay for a doula, or like what's the general cost of this kind of service? What's the range?
Yeah, it depends on the area that you're in. So it can be anywhere between, in like rural areas, you can pay about $800 per birth. In the more city areas where it's more prevalent, you're paying up to $2,000, $2,500 for a doula, same service. So it just really depends on where you're located, but we're each doing, and each of us will do a little bit different things. Like, and that just means how many prenatal visits we'll do versus and postnatal visits we include into the package of what we're doing with you, and how we, but the supporting you consistently one-on-one is consistent throughout the process. But yeah, it can be pretty pricey. So it's definitely something that you financially have to plan for.
Okay, let's transition a little bit and talk about the yoga side of your business. Tell us a little bit about you decided to get into yoga and why you're providing that as a service.
I got into yoga, actually, first time I got into yoga was when I was in college athletics and couldn't do a lot of the activities anymore because I had been injured so much. And so we had to do some alternative stuff. So the year I won nationals, that whole year, all I could really do is spin bike, throw, and do yoga. So it really created strength in different muscles that I hadn't thought about. And so as I was thinking about what I was going to transition to after coaching collegially, I was like, what am I going to do? And how can I help others to really find their own journey and stuff? So yoga became an option, and I started doing it more consistently myself and picked it back up again, and just realized how much of not just a physical practice it was, but how much it was taking me through spiritually. And so how much it was helping me just ground down into what was my truth and what was most prevalent for me and why I needed to create the best environment for me to thrive, which was opening my business. So I have found everyone needs this. Everyone needs to feel this, and everyone needs to know how to breathe in hard situations. And that's what I found, is that yoga is more than just the physical practice. It's really about the breath. It's really about the meditation. It's really about finding that peace for you. For me, it's Christ, but for someone else, it may be something else. But really finding that and grounding down into that strong foundation for yourself and knowing, okay, I can come back to my mat each and every day, and I'm going to find this serenity, peace, and be able to go off my mat and live in this world where there's stuff that I can't control. But I can control how I'm breathing, how I'm dealing with it, how I'm reacting to it. And that's what I found yoga to be, and how I want to share it.
Yeah, and I think it's really important for people to have something, no matter what that outlet is, that allows you to kind of center yourself and clear your mind so that you can go toward your goal. So even if that's like wanting to pay off debt and wanting to save for your first house, there's also always a mental aspect to organizing your finances that has to come from a positive place that's within you. Really thinking about what it is that your plan is, where you want to go with your plan, and how to best accomplish that without taking on a bunch of stress is an exercise in mindset and in getting the practice around creating positive money habits. So whether it's yoga or something else that's similar is a really important thing for people to consider, and how it can actually tie into, like you said, finances in addition to your spiritual part of life and all different parts of your life.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's what it has definitely done for me, because I know more about money now, because after finding my centering and doing all of the work in the practices that I've done is just really led me to a person who helps me with trying to buy a house. And so they made me go through the Spend Smart classes, which told me about how to save and just tracking my money and saying, okay, what am I spending my money on even? Whereas I usually don't use, unfortunately, the bank book. I still don't, because I'm like, I know what I'm using. I can just look on my computer and see where I just spent money. But really tracking it and seeing what is going in and what is coming out, and why do I have this automatic debit coming out of my account and I don't even use this service anymore, and really calling those people and getting those things fixed. It really makes me more aware of the stuff that I can control. Like, hey, dude, you're just throwing money away.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good lead into where I was going next anyway. So can you describe for us where you are now, what kind of strategies you're using to organize your finances? As a business owner, there's a lot of tracking and stuff that has to take place there. So just tell us a little bit about the members of your financial entourage or the way that you're strategizing and organizing yourself.
Yeah, so right now I am using a money marketing person. She's really just helping me try to buy a house, but she takes me through the spend smart things. And so they're doing a money match thing for me right now. So I save X amount of money and then they match that amount of money, which is fabulous. And then beyond that, just with the business, really just tracking every little thing, saying, okay, here's what I drove today. Here's what I spent money on for a business meeting or a networking event, and really just calculating all of these different pieces and trying to follow and opening up different accounts so that I'm not mixing my money, where it's my business money and my personal money, which I had no idea about either. I was like, well, it's all mine. I'm the business owner, but really getting a better idea of that. Those things need to be separate and having financial security in terms of that. And also having life insurance outside of that. So picking up a part-time job so that my life insurance is covered under that while I'm continuing to build my business. So having different strategies of ways to keep things moving forward until it blows up into something really big, which it will.
Yes, in due time. Certainly, I know that it will. Okay, and so in talking about that, you mentioned having a side hustle. Can you tell me a little bit more about like how a side hustle is part of the strategy? And as an entrepreneur, we frequently sometimes have to figure out how to make ends meet as, like you said, we're pursuing and getting ready to grow.
I love that my side hustle is within a health center. So I am the volunteer program manager. So what I basically do is recruit volunteers to this health center to come in and volunteer their time for various amounts of time. And so it's great because it allows me to network for not only my organization, but also for my business. So it's dual. So it's all part of the plan in being able to keep me moving forward. And that was really a big goal for me, is like, if I'm going to do this side hustle, I needed to really fit into what I'm trying to do overall so that I'm not spinning my wheels. So it works out really great. I also get contacts with pregnant women who are already here. And as we're rolling out this new system in our state, it helps to be in the right place to be able to utilize that as well. So anyone can come into our health center, but oftentimes we have a huge refugee population here at our center. I would say 80% of our clientele are from the refugee population, speaking all different languages. So it just allows me to be more cultured as well. I feel like interacting with the different people and seeing what their story is and not making an assumption about people's story and getting to know them.
I think that's pretty cool. And I think it's interesting too, how you're really thought about taking advantage of, I have this side hustle, but it also needs to work to my advantage in what my long-term goals are. And so how can I make that something that's going to keep me in line with what I'm actually trying to pursue and have extra benefits above and beyond the insurance that's available and the money that's available is like, oh, this is also a referral source for me. So being able to strategize around what side hustle you chose in order to give yourself the best chance of success at what you're ultimately wanting to do on a full-time basis is a really cool thing to have thought about. All right, so let's talk a little bit about family. I think family is such a big part of life and who we are. And you mentioned having your mom and your two siblings because you're 3 people total, right?
Yeah.
Are there any other obligations that you have to family as a single woman? People would just automatically assume you're responsible for yourself. But what else is there that you have to think about from a financial standpoint?
Being the oldest in the family and coming from a matriarchal family in general, from my grandparents on both sides, really the woman kind of ran the household. I take on not just my stuff, but helping my mom, helping my younger brother who is in recovery right now. So financially helping him get back on his feet in a limited way. And then also both of my nephews and my niece, feeling very responsible to help them in whatever way that I possibly can, especially on my brother's side with his son as he gets himself back together. So there's a lot of ways that my money is going out. So being mindful of that and how I'm able to support, whether it's summer clothes, buying the summer clothes wardrobe for my nephew, or helping my mom with her phone bill and covering that for her, or managing lump sums of monies that she may get just because she has a hard time managing money. So really picking up that responsibility and knowing that it's not even a question, will I? It's just, you're going to do this, Shay, and this is what you need to do. And so you need to figure out how to do it in a better way. So even when my mom just got a lump sum of money of like $30,000 or $40,000, I was like, okay, someone tell me how I can diversify. I'm going to be giving her out this amount, but how do I move it around and make it grow for her so that when she does come and ask for more money, there's more there to give. So really just trying to figuring out those little things, but also not tying it all up so that if there is something major that she's like, I absolutely have to do this, then I can also get it out if she needed to do that. So really trying to figure that stuff out without being a financial person has been difficult, but we're managing and wading our way through it.
And so I'm assuming that your mom is retired. Is that why she's getting lump sums of money?
Yeah. My mom is retired and then they messed up. She got hurt on the job in her second career and they messed up and didn't pay her for a year and a half because they were like, oh no, we're not covering that. And so she fought it, which she should because she's been working since she was 14 and paying into Social Security. And so they were like, oops, our bad, we forgot something. And so ultimately gave her all of her back pay in one lump and then started paying her regularly like she was supposed to get. So I just took the lump sum. She still gets the other. And I just like make sure that she is covered.
I think it's really cool too that you guys went back and said, no, something is wrong. We need to make sure that this gets right. But it also speaks to the importance of checking into your Social Security statement on a regular basis, checking into all these different statements you get in the mail. Sometimes it sounds like gobbledygook or big fancy formulas and you don't really get it. But I put this much aside this year. Is that in fact what's going into my account? Just doing those kind of checks and balances to make sure that things are done properly, because you get 10 years down the road and something wasn't done. And it's a lot harder to fight it and to go back. So it's great to hear that she was able to get that money. But I think you also bring up a really good point about the responsibility that young professionals sometimes feel to their parents and how we can best plan for that as young professionals, because millennials, whatever you want to call us, those in our 20s and 30s have parents that are in our 40s and 50s that on the front side of retirement, or if you're the younger sibling, your parents might be 60. You know, my mom is 67, I think. Look, she's old. I don't know. Sorry, Mom. She doesn't listen to my podcast anyway. But no, seriously, like in thinking about your parents approaching retirement, you also need to think about, did they do what they were supposed to do? Are they good, like you said, at managing money? So you may have this fixed income coming in, but it may be less than what was coming in when you were working. And so how is that going to affect the way that your parents can live, their expenses that they have, their ability to live the life that they want now that they're not working? And you would say, my parents have been self-sufficient their whole life and they'll be fine, and make that assumption. But it's an important conversation to have, to say, like, did you in fact save the way that you were supposed to so that you could retire and not be a burden to anyone else? Or are there some expenses that are not going to be covered? Because I don't know very many people that are going to leave their mother who raised them hanging. You know, some people don't have great relationships, but in general, if your family needs something, you're going to step in. And so that has the potential to derail a young professional's financial plan. You might be doing your saving and your accumulating assets and things like that, but you forgot to take into account somebody who is near and dear to your heart. And now their lack of a plan is affecting your plan. So the fact that you took the initiative and taking that lump sum from your mother and saying, okay, we're going to divvy this out. And like you said, we're going to be forward thinking in what if there's an emergency and we got to get a little bit more of it. But we know better than to give you this lump sum. It's mature in and of itself for her to say, you're right, it'll be better in your hands and I'll better be able to manage myself in the long term with a little bit of help.
Well, yeah, we had to learn from a mistake before, because she originally retired when she was 55, because she had already worked 25 of years and got a even bigger lump sum and went through it very, very fast. And I was not living near to her. I was living down south at the time. So I wasn't able to grab it and didn't know that I should grab it at that point. So yeah, we had to learn from the hard way.
Yes. Well, thanks so much. I think you gave us a bunch of nuggets today, Deshaya, and I think it is really, really just wonderful the way that you're strategizing and planning for your future and for the future of those that you care about. Now we are transitioning into what I like to call the final sprint. I'm going to ask you 5-ish. Sometimes I like to ask more questions, but the idea is that you answer them pretty quick. It's not a one-word answer per se. It's just kind of what's the first thing that comes to your mind. Are you ready?
Ready.
All right. What is your worst money habit?
Using my debit card.
Why would you say that's your worst habit?
using my debit card because it's like, oh, there's money forever. And so I just swipe. And then I go and look at my thing. I'm like, oh, shoot, I swiped it too many times this week.
Gotcha. Yeah, that idea of when you swipe and you just feel disconnected from it. So yeah, I can completely see how that could be a bad money habit.
Yeah.
Okay, tell us about your best money habit.
My best money habit is paying myself first.
Yes. That is the motto here on Worth Listening. Pay yourself first. Figure out the rest later, but do in fact prioritize yourself. Okay, let me stay on track. You have $20 in your pocket right now. What do you spend it on?
I want to say a smoothie or something like that. Something good, healthy food. I'm on a healthy food kick right now. So yeah, I would probably spend it on some good, healthy lunch.
And a smoothie can cost you $20 nowadays with all these add-ons that they put in. Best advice you've ever received?
When I do get married, to keep 2 accounts. I think that's really good advice.
Yeah?
I don't know.
No merging of the finances?
Oh, no. Well, I'll have my own account and then we'll have a merged account as well.
Gotcha. Okay. Something you do for fun that doesn't cost anything.
I do like arts and crafts in my house myself. So I just keep like art supplies in the house and just do arts and crafts in the house.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah. That sounds like it could be entertaining if you're into artsy stuff. I can't draw anything or color anything. So, all right. Our final question is, can you share something with us that you would like to improve about your finances in the upcoming year?
I would like to pay off a substantial amount of my student loan and as well as rectify any outstanding collections or anything that I might have. I want those all to be gone so that the only thing that I would have would be my student loan that I'd be paying off.
Okay, so what's the action item to help you achieve that goal?
I've started it, calling the places and negotiating down the amounts that they're saying that I owe. So that's the action item right now, is just negotiating down the amount and then making sure I have that lump sum amount to give them once it's negotiated down.
Okay, I like it. All right, so just shout yourself out now. Tell us what you're up to, where we can find you, how we can support you.
Please support me on my @RenewedYouthNY on Instagram, Renewed Youth on Facebook, and then my personal Instagram as well is InHisArms21. So any of those places you can find me, find out more about me and the things that I'm doing in my area. Right now, I'm working on a yoga retreat thing that's going on. It starts in June 2nd. And so please, if you're in the upstate New York area, please come out and join me for that event. More details are on both of those sites, as well as my website, renewedyouthny.com. So you can find out more about me, and I'll be blogging here soon about the journey of building the yoga business and dueling together. So that's what's going on with me right now.
And all that will be in our show notes as well. Deshaya, thank you so much for being on the Worth Listening podcast. Look forward to following your story and hearing all about your success in the future.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been great.
I hope you enjoyed listening to Deshaya's money memoir. Deshaya touched on some valuable pieces of information. She explains how she used sports to play for 6 years of education and what she had to do in order to obtain the scholarship. She also shared why it was so important to her that her side hustle be in line with her business and how that's benefited her along the way. Our word of the day today: student loans. If you're still in college, just recently finished college, thinking about going back to college, you need to be creating a strategy for your student loans. You can avoid them by looking for scholarships, even if you're not an athlete. Spending the time and effort that it takes to find those scholarships could be well worth it to avoid the student loan debt hanging over your head for years to come. If you are obtaining student loans, remember, you don't have to take the full amount that they offer you. Take what you need and ignore the rest. The more you take, the more you're going to have to pay back in the future. So just be mindful and give yourself the opportunity to work and, like I said, look for scholarship money, look for outside funds so that those student loans don't weigh you down. Thank you for tuning in today. We hope you found this episode worth listening to. If you have financial questions, suggestions for guests, or would like to share your money memoir, please contact us through our website, worth-listening.com.